Richard Nixon on the Queen. It's only one sentence. In lunch, I had a luncheon with Queen Elizabeth and a long informal conversation with 19 prominent British citizens. Then he had a private talk with Prime Minister Wilson in a comfortable room at 10 Downing Street. A warm fire cast a glow over the room, and after a few minutes, Wilson leaned back in his chair and put his feet up on the table. He was wearing carpet slippers. Our conversation ranged from America's position in Vietnam to Britain's role in Europe, and we'll get back to some more of that, but let's read the entire paragraph, okay? This is the Presidency, 1969, page 370, Nixon's book. Okay, so Nixon's book. It's called something, I don't know. Nixon, the Presidency. It was a copyright 1978. So I'm going to read the whole paragraph so you can situate yourself of when Nixon in 1969, when we landed on the moon, when he met Queen Elizabeth II, the same one that just died, Europe and de Gaulle. On February 23rd, I left Washington for an 8-day working visit to Europe. I wanted this trip, my first abroad as president, to establish the principle that we would consult with our allies before negotiating with our potential adversaries. I also want to show the world that the new American president was not completely obsessed with Vietnam, and to dramatize for Americans at home that despite opposition to the war, their president could still be received abroad with respect and even enthusiasm. Most important, I felt that President de Gaulle's cooperation would be vital to ending the Vietnam War and to my plans for beginning a new relationship with Communist China. France had diplomatic relations with Hanoi and Peking, and Paris would be the best place to open secret channels of communication between us and them. But de Gaulle had become seriously alienated from America during the last several years. In 1966, he had the NATO headquarters removed from France. What? No NATO headquarters out of France? Where's the headquarters at now? Whether we should be able to use Paris as a site for our diplomatic overtures would depend on my ability to overcome the estrangement that had grown up between us and to establish a relationship of trust and confidence with de Gaulle. The first stop was Brussels, where I had set the tone for the trip when I told the North Atlantic Council, I have come for work, not ceremony, to inquire, not to insist, to consult, not to convince, to listen and learn, and to begin what I hope will be a continuing interchange of ideas and insight. In London, I had a luncheon with Queen Elizabeth and a long informal conversation with 19 prominent British citizens. I wonder who those 19 prominent British citizens were. And is that tea? Nixon had tea with Queen Elizabeth? Oh, yeah, tea time with the Queen, huh, Nixon? And who were these 19 prominent citizens? And what did they have to say? A long informal conversation? What did they say? What was it about? We don't talk about that. But we're going to talk about Prime Minister Wilson. Which one is this? Wilson? It's not a memorable one. Prime Minister Wilson, that's not Winston Churchill. That's Wilson. Did you mean Churchill? In a comfortable room at 10 Downing Street, a warm fire cast a glow over the room, and after a few minutes, Wilson leaned back in his chair. He put his feet up on the table. How freaking rude. How rude! The Prime Minister? I remember never mind. Oh, well, yeah. You know, there's this shitty-ass fucking librarian in goddamn Warsaw, and I'm goddamn, 15, 10, I don't know. But I go in there, and I'm reading the book, and there's a couch. And I'm, reading the book, and I was laying on the couch. It was a nice couch, and I had my feet. I want to say I took my shoes off, but I had it off to the side of the couch. But she says, don't lay on the couch. And I said, why not? Because you get your feet on it. It was clear that my feet was off the couch. Anyways, I never went back to the fucking library again. Fucking old fucking curmudgeon motherfucker being a fucking prick to some young person that she didn't know. You get out of here. What you doing what are you doing reading our books and reading get out of here. I'm only acting like Prime Minister Wilson. That's all I was doing. Putting my feet up on the table. I didn't even do all that. Prime Minister Wilson leaned back in the chair. Oh my God, leaning in the chair, putting his feet up on the table. And then I'm getting smacked. People are smacking the shit out of me because I don't have manners. He's wearing carpet slippers. And then slapping the shit out of somebody, that's mannerly? Your own flesh and blood, a little bitty boy? It's not mannerly to put your elbows on the table, but you can slap a little bitty boy. That's okay. No, that's so mannerly. That is not mannerly. Our conversation ranged from America's position in Vietnam to Britain's role in Europe. Wilson had met the Soviet leaders when he visited Moscow, and he offered his impressions of their different personalities. He said that if Brezhnev had been born in Britain, he probably would have ended up Secretary General of the Trades Union Council, and if Kosygin had been an Englishman, he would likely have become chairman of Imperial Chemical Industries. Brezhnev is a fucking weirdo. I like Khrushchev. I don't like Brezhnev. A potentially awkward situation arose when Wilson gave a small dinner party for me at 10 Downing Street. In 1962, the British magazine New Statesman had described my defeat by Pat Brown as a victory for decency in public life. John Freeman, who had then been the magazine's editor, had recently been appointed British ambassador in Washington. That evening at Downing Street would be the first time that he and I would be in the same room in an intimate social setting. I decided to relieve the tension by addressing it directly. In my toast after dinner, I said that American journalists had written far worse things about me than had appeared in Freeman's magazine. It was now a part of the past and best forgotten. After all, I said, he's the new diplomat and I'm the new statesman. The men thumped the table and called, "Hear, hear." When I sat down, Wilson slid his menu to me. On the back of it, he had written, "That was one of the kindest and most generous acts I have known in a quarter of a century in politics. It just proves my point. You can't guarantee being born a lord. It's possible, and you've shown it, to be born a gentleman." You know what? Not all of us could be born lords, but some of us, and you, sir, some of us could be born gentlemen, and you, sir, that's exactly what you have done. We have feared anti-war demonstrations. We had feared anti-war demonstrations, and a few took place during this trip, but none could mar the overwhelmingly friendly reaction of the large crowds that greeted us everywhere we went in London, Paris, Bonn, Brussels, Berlin, and Rome. Whenever possible, I took impromptu walks or plunged into crowds to shake hands and meet people. The high point of this trip, personally and substantially, was my series of meetings with de Gaulle when Air Force One taxied to the terminal at Orly Airport. I could see him standing coatless at the foot of the ramp. I had been told that the temperature was just above freezing, but I immediately took off my overcoat. As we shook hands, de Gaulle greeted me in English, a virtually unprecedented personal gesture for him. When we met privately that afternoon at the Élysée Palace, the first topic of discussion was the Soviet Union. He said that the central fact of life for post-war Europe was a Soviet threat, but he believed that the Soviets themselves had become preoccupied with China. He said they are thinking in terms of a possible clash with China, and they know they can't fight the West at the same time. Thus, I believe that they may end up opting for a policy of rapprochement with the West. He thought that the Russians' traditional fear of German armies would give added impetus to whatever inclination they already had towards détente. As far as the West is concerned, he continued, what choice do we have? Unless you are prepared to go to war to break down the Berlin Wall, then there is no alternative policy that is acceptable. To work toward détente is a matter of good sense. If you are not ready to make war, then make peace. If the Russians made a move, I asked, do you think they believe that the United States would react with strategic weapons? And do the Europeans have confidence that we would move in answer to a Soviet attack or the threat of an attack by massive conventional ground forces? I can only answer for the French, he replied. We believe that the Russians know that the United States could not allow them to conquer Europe, but we also know that if the Russians marched, you would not use nuclear weapons right away, since it would imply a total effort to kill everyone on the other side. If both the Russians and the United States were to use tactical nuclear weapons, Europe would be destroyed. Western Europe and the United Kingdom would be destroyed by Soviet tactical weapons, and East Germany, Poland, Czechoslovakia, and Hungary would be destroyed by American tactical weapons. Meanwhile, the United States and the Soviet Union would not be harmed.